All right. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. This is what we call our midday movie babble break, part of aGliff 33 Prism. My name is Jim Pugliafico. I'm one of the hosts of the Movie Bears podcast, and we're a bunch of husky, hairy, huggable homos, as we like to call ourselves for this podcast. And we just love talking about film and movies. And that's what we get to do today, and so we're excited. Today I'm joined by my co-host Will Lindis, who's there in Austin. I am elsewhere in the internets, and will introduce us to the filmmakers we have here today and their films. Go ahead, Will.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much for the setup. I'm here in Austin enjoying aGliff. This is day 3 of aGliff 33 Prism, and I am just loving being immersed in so many wonderful feature films and short films. And short films are definitely the topic of the day because we are joined by some wonderful short filmmakers, including, let's see, we start first off with the short film Buffalo. We have Paul Stovall. We have Freddie Paul.
Hello.
And we have Stephanie Umoh.
Hi.
From the film Buck, we have Jovan James.
Hello.
And Elegance Bratton.
What's up?
And let's see, did we just get, looks like not yet. So then going over to the film Vote Neil, we have Honora Talbott.
Hello.
And Mike Rudolph.
Hey, guys.
Hey, y'all. Hey, wow, what a crew of filmmakers we have here today. And we've been excited watching the shorts so far, and just so many amazing shorts. And we've got a whole bunch of questions for you guys. So we'll start with the movie Buffalo and Paul. It's Paul. Is it Stovall or Stovall?
It's whatever makes you feel good.
Oh, okay. Well,
My mother says Stovall.
yeah, Stovall. All right, cool. And it's part of the Fiction Shorts #2 lineup, available on August 12th. Our first question is, Zeke is the character you play. Is such an interesting character because he goes through this arc in the film from a kind of a cold, I guess, standoffish, blocked writer to, this warm, engaging character, and we get to see him open up a little bit. Can you explain what the thought was when forming this multifaceted character, like in such a condensed time, in such a short piece?
Yes. It was the basis of the piece was about isolation and almost low-grade depression. I don't know if anybody can relate to that these days.
Yeah.
So what a prescient film it turned out to be. And so the idea was that we actually, this is Freddie and I's first film, and we had certain plans in order of how it was going to go, but when you're learning your first time around, you have to let the world in as you shape the story. So we thought the most important thing was to stay in a truth. So the plan we had was not at all what the film turned out to be. And so we just wanted to focus on isolation and what happens when that starts to melt away.
Yeah, we kind of got hit by a surprise snowstorm, and it kind of changed everything, really. We just kind of had to adapt. But I loved the exercise. It turned out to be kind of like a 48-hour film festival or something like that in that respect, because we only had 2 or 3 days to film out there. And so we just had to roll with the punches.
And the location changed in 24 hours before we started, a complete location change. So we had to deal with that as well. Stephanie's character, which you only hear and not see,
right?
We knew we had that in our back pocket for how we would use Zeke's agent that calls from New York several times. So we knew we had in our pocket that we could in post fill in with that character to help us tell the story as well. So we had these variables that we were working with.
So you knew you had Stephanie, Snow, and Sushi, and from there, kind of everything, everything just kind of came from that. That's awesome.
Well,
I mean,
it's funny because
even Sushi became like what could get delivered, because where we were shooting in Buffalo, New York, and what I was going to have them get was a different type of food, but sushi is what we could get, so we had to work with that.
And when we started off shooting, we didn't have any snow. But I think snow or just weather changes is a great visual indicator of the passage of time. And so we just kind of leaned into it. And we're like, okay, Zeke is here for a long amount of time, not just a few weeks. You know, this could be a whole season at this point.
Right.
Paul,
Awesome.
there's so much chemistry on screen between you and the actor James Fraser. And I found myself absolutely just captivated by every scene that the two of you shared. And it's really interesting because I think a big part of that comes from how much vulnerability that we get to see from both characters, but specifically Zeke, as he processes and explores and sort of comes to grips with things. And I know that you both were involved with both writing the script and playing that lead role. And I wonder how that vulnerability translates as the writer onto page and then as the actor onto screen. How do you parse those two things?
You know, frankly, all I focus on is, you know, I do want to make films about Black people. I do want to make films about Black gay people. And I do want to make complicated films about complicated Black gay people. So, you know, when I would tell my colleagues, Stephanie and I are on tour with Hamilton, and we're shut down right now, as everyone else's lives are as well. So we're touring the country doing this show and receiving the immensely joyful reactions that people have to that show. But we also are involved in this very complicated show about complicated, you know, it's a complicated situation of Black people playing these historical figures. And when I tell my colleagues, yeah, I'm making this LGBT film, they are always interested in, ooh, well, is it a cute guy? Where's the nude scene? Where's the sexy stuff? And what I'm more interested in is the vulnerability of the heart. So that part of it was, I could just zero right in, you know? It was it was actually, the difficulty was staying true to myself, to stay in a world of nuance, to stay in that world of, you don't have to do this next thing. What you just did is enough to tell the story. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And it translates.
You know where to stop.
Yeah. You know, it translates through to me as the viewer here too, because I mean, I think there's so many different ways to tell LGBTQ stories, and from so many different angles. And it's interesting to see them from, you know, from the angles that we've seen them from before. They're popular for a reason, but what you tapped into is something that's very a very human and relatable experience. That's also one that's very difficult for people to tackle and to communicate. And so I would hope, at least for me, as someone who's experienced both, you know, grief and as a part of the LGBTQ community myself, I was able to project some of myself onto Zeke and have some of Zeke projected back onto me. And I hope that other audience members are able to have that same experience.
Me too.
Cool. Hey, this one might be for Freddie, since he talked about Buffalo, which is the shooting, or at least one of the shooting locations of the film. What is the significance to any, if any, to Buffalo as the location and title of the film, in that do one of you maybe have a connection to that area, or is it just a place where, you know, when you think of isolation, you think of Buffalo?
Well, I think it started off as, you know, just going back to like the idea that we just had to work with what we had. It was one of the locations on Paul's tour for Hamilton. And so when we started coming up with this plan to kind of have me fly in from LA to meet up and do this, I think Paul started thinking about the locations a little more thematically. Maybe you can speak to that, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, the title of the working script was Touch, because it was all about the moment where Zeke reaches his hand out and he touches him. And, you know, as any working title, as we were in post and looking at it and looking at how the city of Buffalo and the background, and Stephanie had kind of very recently joined the production. And so Buffalo was a special city for her to be in doing her role. And it was so special to just be there. And I thought, Paul, you're working too hard. You shot it in Buffalo. It was tough. Buffalo took over. The weather in Buffalo took over. And so it was trying to tell me. And then the very obvious connection of how we picture, you know, how many of us have actually seen a buffalo in the wild? Not many, probably. They exist out there kind of on their own, in our lore, in our mythology of America.
Right.
So this idea of being isolated and being alone and making your way and being a big, powerful creature. You can't tell how tall I am on the screen. You get some idea, but so that's what we went for. And then we shot another film called Columbus when we were in Columbus.
You're doing a tour of the U.S. Through all your different films.
Tour of the Rust Belt, yeah.
I have a question for Stephanie. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came on board with this project and sort of your involvement?
Oh, yeah. So it's actually kind of a funny story. I remember we were between shows. It was a Saturday and we had 2 shows, and I had gone down after the first show to like sign some posters, you know, and Paul comes in and he's like, hey, you know, he's with his Buffalo script, and he's like, would you mind? I need to hear what this sounds like, this piece of dialogue. Would you mind reading this for me out loud? I just want to hear it. And I said, okay. So I read it out loud for him, and he goes, actually, could you try it with like a really husky New York accent? really kind of like, you know, and I was like, sure. And I tried it. And then, you know, the next day he was like, okay, I actually really love your reading of that. Could you call me on my phone and leave a voicemail as this character? And I had no idea what was going on. And I was just like, okay, you know, and anyway, I think I left him like 5 voicemails. Right. And then I also did voice memos. So I was giving him layers and options. So anyway, but it was just really kind of happened randomly and so kind of suddenly. And I don't think he intended on me playing this character. It just kind of happened. So,
and it was only supposed to come in for one little bit. But after all the takes she gave, Freddie, you know, and in post, he's trying to piece it together. And he was like, you know what? I need Candace to come back right here when when the snowplow is coming by. And he just looked through and he's like, you know what? I can use this other one she gave. Who is this woman? She gave me 4 monologues. It was great.
Right,
I was really impressed.
So it worked out. She did get paid, just in case anybody, you know. I came clean and I told her what I was doing and we got everything straight.
Exactly.
Well, fantastic. Thank you all for sharing some of what goes into making a film like Buffalo. It's really fascinating and we definitely enjoyed it. So now I think would like to shift gears over to Elegance Bratton. Is Elegance with us? I think I heard Elegance earlier.
Yeah, I'm here with Jovan James.
Yeah, Elegance and Jovan are here. Elegance is the writer and director of Buck, which is part of the Late Night and Sexy Shorts lineup. My question on this one, fascinating film. Most of it has this palpably, to me anyway, sinister feel that comes across pretty strongly, especially in a big section of the film here. What was your thought for creating the intensity of that portion of the film?
Are you referring to the sex party?
Oh yeah, that one. Sex party is kind of doesn't quite really explain it all.
Right. True. I'll let my co-director and co-writer Jovan take the first swing at that.
Oh, okay. Yes. So, the thought process behind that for me, I guess in a word, is horror to me. It's terror. This is a young man who is dealing with depression, and he's reaching out, trying to find someone to be close to. And he is, being invited by someone who, he thought cared about him, wanted to, nurture him in some way, even though we see that that relationship was always twisted, but he had a certain impression of it. And once he got there, he's just in an environment that he's not used to, that he can't really thrive in. And I wanted that to feel scary. I wanted that to feel tight. I wanted to feel, claustrophobic and, unpredictable. And so everything that we did in that scene, worked towards that goal. The lighting, the music, our composer, James Newberry, Elegance and James really sort of hammered that track down for that song, for that scene. I gotta say, I learned a lot just watching how it changed so much from what he first sent us to, what you hear in the film. But yeah, I guess I'd say we started with the idea of horror, claustrophobia.
Yeah, and also like the idea of, fear and desire are very close to one another. That very often when people are getting what it is that they most are most hungry for, they yearn the most for, they have to take the biggest risk in order to get it. And we wanted to kind of play in that zone of like, the thing that you think that you want becomes much bigger and much more unruly once you're in the middle of getting it.
Right.
Absolutely.
That
Understand that, just
sure.
how palpable that feels on screen too. I think that not to put too fine a flag on it for anybody here, but for those of us who may have been to similar events or parties in our lives, that combination of trepidation and titillation and what have I gotten myself into and what have I gotten myself into and is this what I really wanted? It's such a complex bag, and you feel that it's very visceral and very reminiscent when we see it there on screen. But what's neat is then the film shifts into sort of another territory, and I'm going to be very careful here because I do want people who haven't seen this yet to experience it sort of without me giving away the ending. But at the same time, I think there is a very, very strong moment where you have two characters who are speaking about, say, treatment, well, just to keep it very like the different treatments that they need in different ways, the different things that they need to sort of cope with what they're dealing with in their lives. And I feel like as I was watching that, I couldn't help but wonder if you started with that as the seed and worked back towards the sex party scene, or if in your mind you started with the sex party theme and worked through to the resolution. How did you craft that arc?
It was I'll take this first now, pass it to Jovan, but this was a process in making the film all the way through of collaboration. And like, Jovan came up with this incredible idea that we had spent a lot of time at film school talking about the whole Ed Buck situation, but in general, kind of like coming of age as a Black gay man in a white gay world, and the idea of how just as people, as human beings, we've had to understand ourselves through the eyes of another, right? And always trying to gauge where your place is in society based off of how others see you. And so right then and there with this lead character of Lynn, a young Black gay man who is, dealing with depression and dealing with, the desirous gaze, like the look of desire in other men, and how does he fit within all of that? It became clear that in our relationship, Jovan and I's relationship, that, we're both, I'm about 10 years older than Jovan. I think I won't ever admit that again after this, but
Recorded, everyone. Is it?
It is being recorded. I'm lying. I'm actually younger than Jovan.
The nation of man.
But that in our relationship, when we met at film school, one of the things that inspires me about our friendship is that at times I'm Jovan's support, at times he's my support, and that generational support, the idea that Black gay men from different time periods, if we get the chance to stick around, if we have the opportunity to survive and to thrive and get older, there is the possibility that the older generation can teach the younger generation something that can help them overcome what we're all dealing with, you know, because ultimately I think for Black people and oppressed people in general, this idea of progress and equality and blah, 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 this is a baton passing type of thing. You know, the systems that we fight against are so entrenched that it really requires intergenerational collaboration. And I think this film is a testimony to that.
Yeah, very well said, Elegance. So just to answer that question, it did sort of, in my mind, start with the journey towards self-love, that, and how, someone who understands your journey helps you towards that, and that camaraderie that's built after having a traumatic experience, and so yeah, it did sort of start with what you see at the end, that was sort of always there, and sort of what happens before that, really transformed throughout the collaboration.
It's a interesting ending to this film that kind of left me a little bit off guard, I guess, and wanting to maybe discuss it more with people. But I don't want to, again, like Will, I don't want to get, spoil anything or what's intended there.
Paid, then
What's that?
They already paid for the ticket, then it is what it is.
Yeah. Also true.
yeah. But and Will, I know you mentioned this before, but like, while I can't say that I've never been to a party like that's experienced in this film, I don't think I've ever experienced one like on a boat. So like, how did you guys get the idea to put this on a boat, and like what was went behind that? Maybe that's more of a producer kind of question, but I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant.
Our producer Chester, who is never given enough credit for how brilliant he is, he's also my husband. So yeah, Chester kind of came with that. I'll let you tell the story, Jovan.
Yeah, I was very adamant that we, shoot in Baltimore and incorporate as many, familiar and representational elements of Baltimore as possible. And, Baltimore's a port city, and I was living in Baltimore at the time, so I was able to go out and scout places, and I was looking for a more traditional,
basement
for this.
Right.
I found a warehouse, or something, and it was going okay. I wasn't, really, really set on it. And Chester did come up with that idea. And at that point, and he also said that they were on Airbnb, which I never knew. I never ever knew that. And I guess it makes sense because it's a houseboat, right? So you can live on a houseboat. Some people would say that. And so I visited the boat, and the owner of the boat was a very kind, generous guy. Like, just kept it open. Like, I'm shooting a film here. We're going to be really quiet. We are filming a party. We're not having a party, so I had to really hammer that. So you'll see party lights, but you won't really hear it. But, but basically it was an incredible sort of short-term relationship, because we got the trust of everyone in the boatyard. So we got a boat to shoot in. We got a boat to sit in, holding. And we got a boat that we used the bathroom on. And, just because they liked us. And, that was like really sweet. Cool. That was amazing.
That's really cool.
I thought
cool.
It was cool too, because it was so much smaller than what we were initially planning to shoot in. And so the idea of the claustrophobia worked so much better in that space than it would have at an actual, venue for the types of things Will and Jim get into.
Maybe get into. I'd never confirm that, but
allegedly.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing and giving us some insight into Buck. Fantastic film. But next up is Nick Bornstein. Nick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Nick is the
late. I have technical issues.
Oh, you look fine. You look fine right here. And Nick is the star of Pete Can't Play Basketball, this short film that's part of the Late Night and Sexy Shorts lineup. I got to admit, Nick, I was so enamored with you, your character, and the general tone of this film. I just had to go watch like several maybe all of your other shorts and love them. Can you talk about the character of Pete, though, and what you wanted the audience to know about him, besides that he kind of sucks at hoops, except in his dreams, of course?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And can you hear me all right? Testing.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3.
I think we can hear you fine. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, Pete Can't Play Basketball is a movie about just that. It's about a guy, Pete, who can't play basketball. But it was about so much more for me. I grew up not being good at basketball. I was not good at any sports. And that, of course, right? And that just made me feel so disconnected in many ways. And I just thought that would be a really funny metaphor to think about otherness. I mean, obviously, as queer people, oftentimes we can feel othered. But, a lot of the work that I make is comedy. And I wanted to think about, well, how can we sort of play with otherness through comedy, through joy, through laughter? And so really I thought of this idea where, this character lives in a world that looks and feels just like our own. However, in this world, social constructs, gender, sexuality, race, socioeconomic class, none of that matters. But what does matter, the thing that does offer value in this world, is how good you are at playing basketball. And I just thought it was so stupid, like this idea that these little things in life can somehow define who you are, whatever they are. And so in this world, it was basketball, something that I was very bad at.
As someone who is not very good at basketball either, I can totally relate. Nick, it's
might have
interesting.
to do with the beards, Will.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Beards. I don't know. Yeah. So Nick, it's interesting. You're actually kind of a mini celebrity in our household in that. My boyfriend comes to me to aGliff each year, and of course last year he came along with us, and as we were watching these shorts together, he just goes, "Is that the guy from Sweater? I love Sweater." So I just wanted to pass that along. But as part of that, I think that there's something in your films, and it's definitely on play here. And you build these worlds that are very like alternate reality worlds, right? Like where everything is just a little heightened or a little exaggerated or kind of pushed off to one degree. And I think part of that comes through in the details, like the way that people interact with the peculiarities of this world. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about building the world of Pete Can't Play Basketball and all of the office politics that come into play there.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. That's so incredibly kind. I love that you've seen Sweater and liked Sweater, and Jim, you as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that surrealism and sort of poking fun at the world around us is, to me, an amazing way to tell story, an amazing way to sort of get people at the table in a way that they can sort of process things a little bit differently. I know that when I watch drama, sometimes the laughter that like allows me to just be like so much more connected. I was really inspired by Fleabag, obviously. Fleabag, for those of you who've seen, I thought was just such a beautiful show. And I love how she broke the fourth wall. I love the ability to sort of build a relationship directly with the audience. It feels very theatrical, sort of a world that I also come from. And so in the film, Pete actually breaks the fourth wall and he talks directly to the audience, sort of in character that is actually quite different than the character that he inhabits when he's in the office, when he's around other people. And I thought that would be really fun to sort of play with this idea of, we all know who we are deep down. Like there's a part of us that we love and that we're like, that's my best self. But oftentimes that self has a hard time coming out in real life. And so in this world of my film, Pete is sort of this meek, sort of nervous character when he's in the office, when he's talking to people, when he's dating. But, when he talks to you, when he's really his realest self, he's like confident and sure of himself. And that was something that I really wanted to play with. I think Fleabag was a bit of an inspiration because she does have this odd, this sort of connection with the audience. But I think she's sort of the same person, when she is in the world, she is sort of brash and hilarious and honest, but she's also that way when she talks to you. And so I thought it'd be fun to play with this idea of what if you're sort of these two different people?
Yeah, and I think that the idea of that breaking the fourth wall, which he does like right off the bat, right? I think in the very first scene. And the idea of otherness and dealing with otherness works very well together, because it helps kind of get the audience kind of on the same team as the character who's talking to them, saying, hey, here's where I am. And the audience immediately can maybe empathize with that character a little bit better because he is talking to them. So I think that was brilliant.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the kind of the process of doing the comedy writing in this, because comedy's hard. And I think that so much of what really works so well about the comedy here is that it, for me as a viewer, it felt like it was very tightly woven into the script. But I wonder how much of that was locked in from the get-go, and how much of the way that that presented itself were on-set opportunities and discoveries. How did you craft all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I wrote this film sort of in succession with my two other short films that sort of were premiered last year, and one is Sweater, which was sort of this heightened dance film where I dance, and then the other one is 99, which was this much sort of darkly comedic, very grounded, familial story. And for me, Pete was like an opportunity to just like really go for broke, just be like, you know what? Here's this like germ of an idea around like, I hate basketball. All right, what do I do with that? Like, how do I tell that story? And so it sort of spiraled, if you will, into what the film became, which was, you know, this sort of, like you mentioned, sort of hyper reality, heightened sense where I do hate basketball. Sorry, I just saw, I'm seeing the notes pop up. I don't hate basketball. I just think that I've always like probably resented basketball because I'm not good at it. So really it's not basketball's fault. It's more like my own process that I think I need to workshop. But anyways, I think that ultimately this film, to me, I really wanted to be really stylized with it as well. I'm really inspired by like Edgar Wright and sort of like filmmakers who are able to like use editing, use camera work, use the script to really heighten comedy. And so for me, like, I just wrote what I thought was funny. You know, I'm sure, I know some of you on this as well are other performers and writers too. And like, sometimes I'll just say it. And like, if it makes me laugh, I'm like, all right, that's a joke. Like, I think that's funny. And I think that also helps sometimes when you are a writer, performer, director, because you can sort of be like, would I say that? Like, does that make sense? Or is that funny? And then to hear it said, like right in the moment. I know the Buffalo folks were talking about like, the ability to like have someone read it and immediately get a sense of that character. So I think writing the comedy just sort of like came with the process. And I think that there is sort of a sensibility that I often do in my films, which are like sort of grounded humor, but sort of in this insane world.
That's interesting. And Nick, thanks for joining us. I know we got to move on to the next film, but one thing I do want to say, it's really a shame that we couldn't kind of all get together in Austin for this, because I think as another person who isn't great at basketball, I do like basketball, but I'm not great at it, we could challenge each other to a game of horse in Austin, right? Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome.
See who could suck the most at playing horse. That would be awesome. I'd like to turn our attention to Honora Talbott, the director of Vote Neil, which is found in the documentary shorts lineup of aGliff 33.
Hello.
Hi, Honora. Is it Honora or Honora? How do I say this?
It's Honora.
Honora. Okay, excellent. So, first of all, congratulations on the film that I think clearly shows us like the drive, motivation, and perseverance that makes like an earnest idealist like Neil focus like past the obstacles. And for a gay political candidate in Alabama, there have to be many. How did you decide to make the film about that topic, or what connection did you have to Neil and wanting to tell his story?
Well, I actually feel like the whole journey of making this film was very happenstance and very just like cosmic luck and chance to put us together. This is my first documentary, and I usually make narrative films and comedy films. And so I was in Birmingham for a different film festival, Sidewalk Film Festival, and where a different short film of mine, a narrative film, was playing, and I was there all by myself. And so I was in one of these filmmaker lounges, and I got myself a little snack, and I just was like, hey guys, can I sit with you? And Mike and Neil were like, of course, sure, hey. And so warm and welcoming. And I just learned very quickly, and literally maybe like 5 minutes of chatting, like what their story was. Neil was like, here's my card. I'm running to, be the first openly gay man in the Alabama state legislature. Here's my partner, Mike. We're both Marine vets. I joined so Mike wouldn't have to go to war again alone. And I was like, whoa, what? Somebody should definitely be following you guys around for election week. I'm sure there's some documentary filmmakers around here. Meet them. And then I went back to Los Angeles, and I just kept thinking about their story, and I kept, basically was just so inspired by it, and was talking with my friend who's also cinematographer I work with, and he was like, why don't we just see if we can do this? Let's do it. So I asked Neil and Mike if it would be cool if I followed them around during election week, and then the rest is history.
Mike, I actually have a question for you. And I think one of the things about this film that really worked so well for me, of course, Neil is great. He is magnetic, just full of so much charisma and passion for helping the people of Alabama. And that all shows. But in watching this film, I kept finding myself also drawn to you. And I think a big part of that is because you're a very, and I say this within the context of the film, you're a very supportive and engaging character in your own right. And I wonder how it's got to be difficult, even for someone that you've sort of invited to come along with you to follow this process, even for, kind of opting in doing that, it must be difficult to have some of those more personal, vulnerable moments, including like the hand draw away and all of those things on screen. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you, and how you felt both during the experience and now that the film's out and sort of going through its tour?
No, absolutely. I mean, can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You're good.
It was, the entire campaign, we were very, very careful as to who we allowed anywhere near the campaign headquarters in our inner circle, and then this girl that we met for about 10 minutes at Sidewalk gives us, sends us a message about 2 weeks before the campaign. She was like, hey, and, and Neil and I talked about it for about 5 minutes, and we're like, she's like pretty cool. It's all right. And then, so we, it's like, oh, yeah, we were nervous about it, but as soon as she came in and, they didn't get off the plane with the cameras rolling or anything. We just hung out, had a few drinks and everything like that, and just kind of got to know she and her crew a little bit. And it was, I know it was truly amazing. It was truly amazing. It was, to tell you the truth, like most of the time we just absolutely totally forgot that they were there. It's like it was at one point, they didn't catch it on the film, but there's at one point it was during election day itself, and I've been up all night and night before, getting things ready, getting the team set up, putting signs out and everything. And I had about 2 or 3 hour break during election day to where I could just lay down and take a nap. So literally on the couch, just passed out. And then I wake up and I hear Neil's distinct text tone. And then I immediately sit up and I grab my phone and I look, and he's leading me at one of the polling locations. But then I noticed that the camera guy is literally like on the ground filming me right there in the face, like caught me in the middle of the nap. And it's like, all right, guys, we got to go, But then we got in the car, and then we just headed out. But it was, I don't know if that answered that first question, but it seemed very natural, She and her entire team were amazing. But I guess afterwards, watching it all play out, it's I don't know. It really is a new experience for me, I guess. Sitting on the couch or on my computer and watching the documentary, which I've done a dozen or so times. You know, I guess it's fascinating to see my life, to see our life. You know, and everything I knew on the screen, everything I knew what was happening, and I knew exactly what the context was for everything because I lived it. But to see our lives through someone else's eyes, is really just a new perspective that I don't think many people get. You know, and
Right.
It really has helped put things into a larger context for me and for both of us, really.
And I think, Mike, you mentioned it. This is just one of the things that kind of make this film stand out from just like what some might consider like a standard cinema verite kind of political documentary, right? Was the focus on you, but there were other things, other moments in the film that kind of caught our attention and kind of made this film stand out. One was during, I think it was during the polling day, during election day. Neil is out shaking hands and meeting the voters, and there was kind of an interaction with the film crew. And I was just wondering, Honora, can you tell us a little bit about some of the specific challenges of making this film without influencing, obviously, what's going on in front of the camera?
Well, yeah, again, since this is my first documentary, everything was very new to me. And also this week, election week, is already so stressful for them. So, you know, what you were not seeing is that this has been a whole, year. It's building up to this week. So that's also maybe why you forget cameras are there, because it's way more important stuff happening. And for us, like, I am naturally a person who I think I'm good at being in the background, being a little invisible, but when you're shooting, you really have to get in there. So I really credit my cinematographer, Dan Marks, who has no fear. He's 6'3", he's a big guy. He's just taking that camera and he's like, I'm going in. I'm like, great, Dan, you do that. I'm going to be maybe 10 feet back here, trying to not get in trouble. But he really didn't have any of that fear. So that was great when we were, trying to get close to, different moments. And I guess I don't want to sort of spoil any moments in the film, but I think in the editing process, I did want to have the real moments of you know what? It is stressful having a camera crew following you around, and it's an election, and what are other people perceiving, and just all of that stress was real. And so I did want to include that in the film as well, because that's real,
Yeah. And it was, it must have, I don't know how it made you feel when that moment that we see in the film does happen, where it's mentioned. I don't know, you must have been like, oh no, here we go. I didn't want this to happen.
I mean, honestly, when you're doing any sort of, there's always the stereotype of documentarians inserting themselves into their documentaries, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. But, and I feel like at least I'm not actually on camera or anything, but I still want to tell the truth. And I feel like it's part of the story, and so I wanted to be real. So I didn't have, that was always my goal, to be as honest as possible. So I wasn't like, uh-oh, it was stressful, but in the end of the day, I always knew I did want to include it. And yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did. Like I said, I think it was part of what made this awesome film stand out. So As we look to wrap up, unfortunately, we're getting to the end of time. I just want to remind everyone who's listening or watching that all of these films, these 4 films we talked about today, are amazing, and they can be found as part of the aGliff 33 Prism lineup. So go check the event schedule on the aGliff website for more details. We're going to be doing this again for more films, so you can catch us talking to other filmmakers throughout the festival. On our what we're calling this Movie Bears podcast midday and I guess mid-morning, right? Early morning for me, movie Babble breaks. And don't forget to check us out at moviebearspodcast.com. We do film reviews, interviews, special shows. We just love film. So on behalf of the Movie Bears podcast and aGliff, everybody at aGliff would like to thank all of our guests today for coming on this Zoom interview with us today. It's been fun. We'd also like to thank anybody who's been watching or listening at home for supporting the festival. So thank you all.